Good evening, dear listeners. Today I'm going to tell you about Yvraine, a woman of royal grace. I'm a bit old for all these complicated names from the Warhammer 40k universe, so if I've got the pronunciation wrong somewhere, please let me know in the comments. I'll keep it in mind for my next videos. The struggle to preserve one's kind, to save one's homeland, has always given people the strength to fearlessly face the enemy head-on. However, even in a world of perpetual war, events sometimes unfold in such a way that uncompromising confrontations must be temporarily set aside for the sake of survival. Some argue that making peace with the enemy is unacceptable and often indicates fatigue from the fight, as well as fear of defeat. The only thing the enemy deserves is destruction. However, if there isn't enough strength to crush the enemy, it can be advantageous to get rid of them by making friends. It's time to tell the tale of Yvraine, the Eldar woman who gifted humanity's Imperium its most powerful asset. She was born beneath the gleaming vaults of the Biel-Tan spacecraft, later dubbed the Daughter of Shades. After the fall, which nearly annihilated the Xenos, the survivors created a societal system called the Path of the Elder, aimed at ensuring their well-being and total dedication to one craft. It is believed that such a social measure helps restrain intense emotions, preventing the Xenos from becoming victims of passions that once destroyed their civilization and gave birth to Slaanesh. According to this system, each Eldar chooses one of the many paths and focuses all their efforts on its mastery. After achieving certain accomplishments, it's customary to find a new path, redirecting one's focus to other disciplines. New directions don't replace knowledge from previous ones, rather, they merge with the accumulated experience, revealing previously unexplored facets of one's character. Therefore, Eldar, who have lived for thousands of years, often possess a sophisticated understanding of the universe due to traversing multiple paths throughout their long lives. Yvraine is a shining example of such a fate. In her youth, she dazzled audiences with her incredible acrobatic feats. But the years when the girl roamed carefree through her graceful native city, enchanting both high society and her peers, had passed. The Daughter of Shades became increasingly rebellious, and violence began to manifest in her performances. On the day when the Avatar of Cain appeared during the battle with the Space Wolves on Gnosis Prime, Yvraine decided to embark on the path of a warrior. She was accepted into the ranks of the Dire Avengers, the oldest and most numerous combat unit of the Eldar. These aspect warriors consider Cain's primary art, shuriken throwing, so each of their battles is a spectacle where thousands of enemies die before they can even scream. Despite the fact that using shuriken catapults and pistols unleashes true bloody hurricanes, Dire Avengers are regarded as noble warriors, and their cruelty is justified by the necessity to defend their race, reminding their enemies of the might of the Elder. Biel-Tan placed greater emphasis on the warrior's path than other worlds. Its fleet's ships were led by the Avatar of Cain, unleashing torrents of unbridled slaughter upon enemies. For many years, Yvraine shed blood among the fierce Eldar forces, and her mentor was the renowned Exarch of the Silvered Blade Shrine, known as Larian Starspeaker. However, this proved insufficient to calm her fiery soul. So Yvraine chose the path of a warlock, allowing her to develop psychic skills without leaving the Biel-Tan army. Eldar warlocks are battle psychers, fighting at the heart of the battle, using both spells and weapons. Additionally, they can empower their allies and weaken enemies, siphoning life energy from them. Having learned to wield psychic abilities in combat, Yvraine departed from the established Eldar system, finding herself on the path of an outcast. This term is used by Xenos to describe the fate of an extraordinarily gifted kin who decides to break the accepted cycle. Many argue that outcasts cannot be considered followers of any path at all. After all, deviating from the rules often leads to madness and death. Although some Eldar, even after brief wanderings, sometimes find a way back home or join the Corsairs, as Yvraine did. For many years, she engaged in piracy aboard a pirate ship. With her courage and cruelty, she earned the name Amarok, and her exceptional abilities and power accumulated over her long life led her to the position of captain of the ship Lanathrial. However, among the crew some considered Yvraine a pretender, comparing her to a troubadour who dons a new costume for each role but never fully embodies it. So she merely took on the attributes of her current occupation. However, she herself agreed with such an assessment, admitting that she was somewhat of a chameleon, and after achieving the desired result, she needed a new challenge. In reality, she feared her talents, assuming that too rapid and successful mastery of the new would trap her in Slaaneish's clutches. And so she tried to change the direction of her destiny as soon as she achieved success. The hostile atmosphere led to rebellion, and the crew ousted Amharok when the ship was in the port of Commorragh. The one who took the captain's place soon regretted the mutiny. Only when he was at the helm did he realize how talented a leader Yvraine was, and how much her valuable connections meant. But the moment was missed, and the ship Lanathrial lost its luck. Finding herself in the dark city, Yvraine decided to become one of the gladiators performing in the arenas of Commorragh. The Drukhari draw life force from the pain and suffering of others. Their communities are filled with violence, and the motive for the most bloody murder of kin can be simply the desire to see a distorted face in agony. Satiation with others' pain is the only source of pleasure that saves the Dark Eldar. Understanding this, the rulers of Commorragh tried to prevent the self-destruction of their sick society by encouraging the existence of arenas for gladiatorial combat, where watching spectators could satisfy their thirst for blood. The audience in the stands enjoyed the deaths of humans, space marines, orcs, tyranids and Eldar, but the main heroes of such battles remained the Drukhari witches. These graceful gladiators and representatives of various factions called witch cults to this day are the deadliest warriors of the Dark City. Each cult is led by 3 or more queen succubi and has its own arena. The position of succubus is always held by a woman who retains astonishing attractiveness regardless of her actual age. The performances of these warriors usually evoke special delight from the audience as they refine their bloody skills throughout their lives and kill opponents most spectacularly and gracefully. Over several succubi usually stands another supreme witch cult who not only governs society but also leads her gladiators into battle. Thanks to the skills acquired on the path of warfare and sorcery, as well as the cunning gained during her time leading a pirate ship, Yvraine assumed the post of succubus in her witch cults. Some believe that she achieved success solely through her own talents, while others speak of the patronage of more influential Dark Eldar. However, the ability to command others' attention is no less valuable than martial prowess. The largest and most famous arenas in Commorragh belonged to the witch cult of strife, led by Lelith Hesperax. The ruling witches were so engrossed in their activities that to satisfy the cruel thirst of millions of spectators, they even engaged in breeding tyranids on a daily basis. The unyielding queen of this cult, Lilith, had led it since time immemorial, to the extent that none of her contemporaries could pinpoint the exact date. Nevertheless, rumours circulated about a brilliant warrior supposedly capable of challenging the head of the witch cult of strife. The fame of the rising gladiator was so great that rich corsairs, outcasts, and even a group of harlequins arrived in Commorragh to witness her battle with Lelith. The audience was enamoured with Yvraine's regal elegance, which instantly transformed into a deadly whirlwind. Adding to the intrigue was the fact that the warrior was not a native of Commorragh, and her past was shrouded in mystery. Yet, those deemed worthy opponents for Lelith before her usually perished within moments of combat with the queen of the witch cult of strife. Yvraine led a group of blood brides, and on the fateful night of the battle with Lilith, she had already dispatched several witch incubi and tyranids. Meanwhile, hundreds of light years away from Commorragh, Eldred Ulthran attempted to perform the ritual of awakening Inead, the Eldar god of the dead. But the intervening Imperial Deathwatch disrupted the ceremony, preventing the deity from materializing. It was this interference that saved Yvraine from death that night. She fought Lilith while simultaneously fending off attacks from powerful gladiators and tyrannids. The audience marvelled at Yvraine's skill, and even Asdrubal Vecht, the ruler of Commorragh and all Drukhari, did not overlook the intriguing battle. But the hopeful warrior missed a blow from Lilith, which pierced her chest with a dagger, deeming the wound fatal. Lilith lost interest in Yvraine and went to kill other opponents. The Daughter of Shades did not fall. She covered the wound with a fan in one hand and parried the attacks of assailants with the other. Only the blood flowing from her clothes indicated that the courageous gladiatrix was nearing her limits. She was disarmed by a rival dressed as a priestess of the long-vanished Eldar goddess of wisdom, Moray Heg. Ironically, by severing the hand of Yvraine holding a sword crafted from one of the severed fingers of this very goddess, the adversary pierced the gladiatrix's second hand, but seemingly the dire situation did not break her. The woman bit into her opponent's face and brought her down, literally gnawing her way to victory. Despite the successful conclusion of this duel, Yvraine was still mortally wounded in the chest. Simultaneously, her opponent ceased to breathe. At that moment, a sun-like sparkling sphere appeared on the arena. It engulfed both women, but only resurrected one, imbuing her with the power of her slain adversary. In Yvraine's mind, a new dimension opened, erasing past experiences and aspirations as inconsequential, and her eyes flooded the arena with a white radiance. Before her inner vision appeared a colossal face composed of infinite energy. Eldrad Ulthran's incomplete ritual failed to fully awaken Yncarne, but a fragment of his consciousness traversed the galaxy and found its way to Yvraine, who was on the brink of death at that moment. Some believe that the god chose her randomly, while others say that it was drawn to the multitude of paths Yvraine had walked, endowing her with unique experience. Yncarne's attention made the elder woman the first and most powerful Ynari. The only word the god spoke to her was "daughter," surrounded by a burst of energy, and the gladiatrix soared into the air, sending golden electric pulses into the stands. Thousands of spectators, who had recently enjoyed the spectacle in the arena, turned into skeletons, and the unfinished battles between the Tyranids and other fighters spilled into the audience, adding even more chaos to the scene. Some warriors aimed their weapons at Yvraine, but their shots failed to hit her, encountering an invisible protective aura. The wounds of the warrior healed, and an elegant metal glove appeared on the place of her severed hand. Surrounded by devoted blood brides, Yvraine engaged in battle against Cabalite warriors. But soon she found herself attacked not only by Drukhari and remnants of the Tyranids, but also by demons. Beneath the city, a portal to the warp was hidden, held back by untouchables who perished in an earthquake caused by the power of Yncarne. She cleared her path to salvation. Yvraine killed one of the Hellions, whose death became the first manifestation of the plan of the Eldar's god of the dead. Huskblade did not turn the fallen enemy to ashes, as had happened before, but shattered his body into countless embers, while the soul of the slain did not go to be consumed by Slaanesh, but merged into Yvraine's body. Such actions promised to become an alternative to spirit stones, especially if other followers of Yncarne learned this as well. Overcoming many obstacles in the crumbling Commorragh, Yvraine reached Lanathrial, the ship she had once left in the port. However, the Dark Eldar Overlord, Asdrubal Vecht, realized that Commorragh could fall into the hands of demons with the first strikes of Yncarne's energy. Like many others, he deemed Yvraine guilty of what had happened and set out to pursue her ship. The ruler of the Dark City issued a simple ultimatum: surrender the chosen one of Yncarne, or Lanathrial would be destroyed. But Yvraine made a move that he could not foresee. She directed her massive ship into the Webway portal at such an angle that it became stuck halfway through, blocking the path and thus delaying the pursuers for at least a few hours. Meanwhile, the Daughter of Shades, along with her allies, embarked on foot through the labyrinthine corridors of the intermediate dimension. Following a mysterious guide clad in red, the stranger introduced himself as Visarch. But many years ago, on the warrior's path, he had been Yvraine's mentor, Laurian's Star Speaker. Knowing how talented his protégés were in the art of combat, the Exarch fell into sadness after the Eldar abandoned the chosen path. first for the path of a warlock and outcast, and then fell onto the Commorragh arenas, defying established rules. Larian left the leadership of the temple and went to the Dark City, where he took the name Visarch. He fought among the most deadly gladiators of the Red Incubi, and even became a hierarch, defeating his predecessor in a bloody duel. Visarch did all this only to watch over Yvraine's fate from afar and come to her aid when needed, as it happened after the destruction of Commorragh. Travelling through the Elder Webway, especially through its narrow corridors deviating from the known paths, is very dangerous. At any moment one can stumble upon the lair of the Yncarne or fierce chimeras. But Yvraine was not only frightened by this. Her comrades aged before her eyes from an unquenchable thirst for murder, constantly glancing at each other, and through the unfathomable corridors of the Webway merry and strange songs resounded. The Daughter of Shades thought that only Visarch, the only Eldar god to survive the birth of Slaanesh, knew exactly which parts of the intermediate dimension were still intact, and which were consumed by the enemy. The voice of the perpetually young deity laughed at the hardships of those trying to survive, albeit very quietly. But in this laughter one could distinctly hear malice. The passages became increasingly winding and distorted, and the space changed against the laws of physics, driving the travellers mad. Yvraine stubbornly marched forward, fearing being overtaken by pursuers, but unexpectedly she discovered numerous servants of Asdrubal Vecht. They had all been torn apart by demonettes of Slaanesh, into whose lair the Daughter of Yncarne's group had stumbled slightly before. Among those whirling in a mad dance towered the Mask of Slaanesh, once the foremost and most powerful servant of the Prince of Pleasure. Yvraine was stunned by the monstrous spectacle, while the recently absorbed souls of the Elder screamed in horror. The constant whisper of consumed souls, their curses, and the rewards of all the reborn made her tremble with terror. The highest demonette danced so gracefully that her movements mesmerized and induced an unhealthy tranquility. The Daughter of Shades tried to keep her eyes open, while her retinue became powerless, lowering their weapons and laying down on the ground. However, seemingly inevitable death did not come. The Harlequins were the first to come to the aid of the Yncarne. Their appearance snapped Yvraine out of her stupor and gave new strength to those lost in the Webway. The killing dream touched many, and even Visarch dropped to his knees, holding his head as if in agony. But the sobering appearance of the Harlequin emissary of Yncarne once again inspired her retinue. Followers of Visarch, incubi, corsairs and blood brides united their efforts to destroy hundreds of demonettes, but all their movements paled in comparison to what Yvraine was accomplishing. The wounds inflicted by her blade streamed misty currents, imbuing the witch with the powers of her fallen enemies. The minions of Slaanesh, who had previously revelled in both their own and others' pain, were horrified by the power of the emissary of Yncarne. The Western hedonist, unable to withstand the valour of the Eldar, and the Mask, with a cry of desperation, gathered all her servants and disappeared. Assessing the losses and gains of her small army, the Daughter of Shades decided to venture to the dearest place to her heart in the galaxy, craft-world Biel-Tan. Proud and martial, Biel-Tan was considered by Yvraine as the defender of the entire Eldar race. The Eldari held a special reverence for the Exodites, who lived carefree lives on beautiful planets in harmony with nature. The inhabitants of craft-worlds considered it their duty to protect the Exodite settlements, and believed that one day the pristine planets with peaceful Eldar would once again become the seeds from which the former glory of their race would grow. Many dismissed hope for the Eldar's rebirth as empty and foolish. After all the necessary resources had long been devoured by Slaanesh's hunger, but Biel-Tan seemed to pay no heed to the discouraging remarks. Holding on to its convictions as firmly as the mortally wounded Yvraine clenched her sword on the arena of Commorragh, the Eldar saw in the emissary of Yncarne a potential chance for the revival of their race. Her unique abilities and the fulfillment of Eldrad Ulthran's prophecy promised to bring to life all that Xenos had dreamed of. The seer understood that the success of Yvraine's main mission would come at a high cost to his race. Among the runes predicting a successful outcome, the symbol of Biel-Tan charred and turned to ashes. But what was one craft world compared to the return of Eldar might? The seers Eldrad shared his prediction with saw the same in the future. Their kind stood at a crossroads, where one path led to a fiery abyss and the other to a bright, tranquil existence. And each time, the runes indicated that the outcome depended on the fate tightly bound with the symbols of Biel-Tan and Slaanesh. By all signs, the lesser god recognized the danger of the emissary of Yncarne and intended to destroy her, using a long sealed portal in the Webway hidden in the depths of Yvraine's native craft world. It's widely known of the rivalry among the dark gods and the particular animosity between Khorne and Slaanesh. Therefore, one can only speculate how dangerous the daughter of Yncarne appeared to them, prompting these two deities to unite their efforts for her demise. Demonic armies descended upon Biel-Tan, spilling rivers of blood through the picturesque streets of the Elder World. The ship was crumbling, and aboard it a battle raged, where many brave warriors became fodder for the ever-thirsty goddesses. It was then that Yvraine emerged from the Webway with her allies, some of whom were clad in Drukhari armour. The defenders of Biel-Tan initially perceived them as new enemies, not immediately believing that natives of Commorragh had come as allies. Daughter of Shades spread her arms wide and took a deep breath. Her body was enveloped in a white radiance, and a mist forming around the Eldar swirled around each demon, silencing their cries of agonizing torment as the servants of the Chaos gods vanished. Yvraine triumphantly concluded the battle. Afterward, the first Yncarne were brought into the hall, where the ruling council of Biel-Tan attempted to reach a consensus on saving their world. The attack of the demons had a devastating effect on the wraithbone of the ship, which continued to deteriorate. Yvraine informed the council about the awakening of Yncarne, as well as the fact that the dying world and the entire Elder race had only one way to save themselves, to follow her lead. The new god promised to rewrite history and grant their race power. However, the truth was that for this to happen, every Elder in the galaxy would have to die to fill the deity with death. This myth was known to many, but no one wanted to entertain such extinction for their race. Yvraine proposed to the council what she called the Seventh Path. According to legend, the vanished god of smiths, Vol, in the past forged 5 swords from the severed fingers of the goddess Moray-Heg. To summon the god of the dead from nothingness, all Croneswords needed to be gathered together and enriched with blood. One of the required blades, the Blade of Sorrow, was the eternal companion of Yvraine herself. The second, according to her, was hidden in the depths of the wraithbone of Biel-Tan. The council was reluctant to allow such a violation of the ship, but the rulers of the city lacked the strength to resist the envoy of Yncarne. Plunging her hand into the wraithbone spine of the ship, the sorceress retrieved Asuvar, later becoming the Sword of Silent Screams. It would be with this sword that the Visarch, the most devoted follower of Yvraine, like her, possessing the ability to absorb the souls of fallen Eldar, would fight from that day on. But on that day, not only a sword emerged from the craft world. Answering the sorceress's call from the crumbling core burst forth the Yncarne, the divine avatar of Yncarne. Her appearance astonished the watching Eldar. The beautiful yet repelling creature of colossal size resembled Slaanesh. However, her appearance spoke not of depravity but of the impartiality of death, embracing all indiscriminately. The psychic backlash from the birth of the Yncarne caused violent storms in the warp. Biel-Tan began to deteriorate faster, as not only the flesh of the ship but also its society cracked apart. Some were filled with awe at the divine avatar's appearance, while others saw in her only a creature tainted by chaos, which moreover had brought a witch from Commorragh back to life. The rage unleashed upon Yvraine would have almost killed her if not for the protection of the Visarch and the Yncarne. Sensible Eldar spent the remaining time of the dying world sending spirit stones of their ancestors onto safe ships leaving their homeland. Meanwhile, Yvraine's retinue moved empty waystones to glowing lights, indicating the gathering of souls torn from the shattered wraithbone. The spirit seer stones complied and absorbed the light, despite some of their allies being Drukhari, lacking spirit-seer abilities. This angered some elder, believing Kabbalites were doing something terrible with the souls. However, anyone who attempted to intervene was deterred by the solitaires accompanying Yvraine, explaining that Inari followers did not divide into Drukhari and Eldar, as they were all Inari. Eldrad Ulthran, along with other provinces, created a warp portal through which the Eldar of Biel-Tan could escape the crumbling world. However, when the Yncarne moved through the unstable passage, the disturbance in the material realm became so severe that many Imperial ships veered off course for hundreds of light years. Their Geller fields failed, and even the light of the Astronomicon dimmed. Every moment the Avatar spent in the warp claimed thousands of lives. But knowing the Eldar, they would repeat such a transition 1,000,000 times without regret. Following the plan proposed by the Visarch to locate the remaining Croneswords, they were to head to the planet Biel-4, stuck between reality and the warp. Upon hearing the words of the Inari emissary and witnessing her avatar, the rulers made various decisions. Some rushed at the Inari, accusing her of lies, while others pledged allegiance. A witch, a former envoy from Altansar, unwilling to return her people to the Eye of Terror, impaled herself with a blade, demonstrating readiness to stand with Yvraine and become a part of her. The Gyrinx familiar, the only survivor from the deceased, immediately recognized Yvraine as its new mistress, becoming her faithful companion. Despite this, the council refused to lead their Eldar down the path of rebirth. The Inari, bolstered by new followers from Altansar, the Harlequins' Midnight Sorrow, and elements from Ulthwi, including Eldred Ulthran, headed to the Eye of Terror. On Biel-4, Yvraine's allies faced a heavy battle against the Chaos Demons. The battle was so difficult that even the discovery of the 4th Morai Heg sword by Yvraine did not significantly influence its outcome. The followers of Inead suffered serious losses and risked perishing. If not for the forces of Craftworld Yanden, led by Prince Iriel, coming to their aid. However, the cautious rescuers initially viewed the Inari more as prisoners than honoured guests, and only trusted Yvraine after she revived Iriel, struck down by a Nurgle demon, making the prince another of the reborn. The grateful ruler persuaded his people to follow the Inari into the Webway. Before diving into the interdimensional realms, the Inari emissary managed to revive numerous Aeldari titans crafted from wraithbone. The warriors risen at Yvraine's command felt the world as vividly as they did before their deaths, and their gratitude towards the witch was palpable. Journeying through the abandoned sectors of the Webway bordering the warp remained perilous. Despite the presence of Harlequins among Yvraine's allies, cunning demons, upon learning of the appearance of the followers of the God of the Dead, whispered to Asek Ahriman, who had long dreamed of unlocking the secrets of resurrection. A massive battle erupted between the Inari and Tzeentch's servants, during which Ahriman managed to cast the Inead triumvirate beyond the bounds of the Webway. Sensing the impending wave of madness and horror, Yvraine granted the sorcerer what he so passionately desired. Several Rubric Marines, inadvertently stripped of consciousness by Ahriman, returned to life. Like other resurrected beings by Yvraine, they felt the world as they did in the past, recognized each other, and addressed Asek Ahriman by name. Touched by this spectacle, the sorcerer returned the triumvirate back to the Webway, but he was not destined to enjoy the reunion with his brethren for long. Yncarne drew them towards herself like puppets and cast them into the abyss, demonstrating that Inead takes life as easily as it bestows it. Yvraine, with her cunning, amused Segorak, and he decided to help her reach her goal. However, when they emerged into real space, the Inari found themselves in a region of the galaxy where Imperial forces were battling Abaddon, the Despoiler's armies. Chaos was prevailing, surrounding the outnumbered Loyalist forces, who suspected a nearby Webway passage, likely hoping to escape through it. But they were too blind to detect the gates. The Xenos decided to support the losing Imperial forces and acted as a barrier, protecting humans from the Black Legion, and then led the surviving remnants through the majestic labyrinths of the Webway into Ultramar. Throughout her journey as the envoy of Inead, Yvraine united the warring factions of her race, explaining to her kin that there was no other way to save their lives. She found an approach to all who joined the Yncarne, and shared the revelations of the God of the dead, peering into the soul of each new follower. Against this backdrop, the resurrection of Primarch Reboot Guilliman and the subsequent amicable interaction with him no longer seem surprising. It is reasonable to create alliances to combat a more powerful enemy. Can such an alliance with such alien beings be considered reliable? Only time can answer that. But even attempting to find compromise for mutual salvation is a feat. Understanding the enemy's motives and helping them in a hopeless situation are the first steps towards forgiveness and reconciliation.